this one. I've had these pieces for a few weeks, so I apologize. I've been busy. I am super excited about this ever since Greg Collins, also known as Calling All, posted this on Twitter. I couldn't reply fast enough and say, yes, please give it to us. This is a no-cut Hi-Def NES mod, and I'm not sure who coined the term, either Bob from Retro RGB or Greg. They're calling it the Hi-Def NES mod. Not bad, actually. I kind of like it. So, as you'll see in the video, I go through and trial fit this one. This is a prototype. Like I say in the video, I think Greg already has a color upgrade. As you can see, the grays don't quite match. I think he has something that matches the darker gray a little better. But I do find a few things that I would like to see changes on, so likely there will be another video, another trial fitment before we actually start selling these. So, hope you enjoy the video. One other thing that's going to be asked about a lot, and I'll go ahead and give a rough estimate, and I don't like doing rough estimates, but I believe Greg wants to sell these for around $25. And that's mostly based on his time and the material cost. Or should I say time on the 3D printer and material cost. So that's what we're shooting for. Alright, so this is the parts that I was sent from Greg. And already, I've had these so long. I've had these 3 weeks. I've had these so long that he's already emailed me and said there's a change. But I think the main change is he's figured that he only needs 2 different sizes of screws, so I hope that means these spacers can go away, because I don't like that. I don't like the idea of him having to thread those spacers on there. And he said he found a darker color gray that will more closely match this gray, and that would be nice because they are way off. So hopefully before we start actually selling these, we can get a hold of another prototype maybe and verify how much closer that gray is. Let's see, I want to say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 pieces, and then 8 if you want to count those spacers. Just by looking at these screws, oh, looks like you sent me all the same length. Okay, so yeah, it looks like these 3 will be replacing these 3, which is fine. This is a parts unit, obviously. It looks like I had marked it to start doing the Hi-Def NES mod. So yeah, that's the plastic that would normally be cut for your Hi-Def NES install. That's why it's called a no-cut mod, because we will not be cutting plastic. Okay, so at this point I actually need to bring up the installation instructions. Okay, what I'm seeing of Greg's install instructions is, one of the first things is this piece right here needs to be press fit into the outer riser piece. And he's already done it for me. I'm assuming we'll be shipping them pre-fit. Okay, it's not that hard to get them in there. And it feels like they bottom out nicely on the outer riser piece. Let's see. And he says these 4 spacers need to be glued in, which I'm assuming also something we will already have done when we're shipping them out. I think a lot of these instructions have to do with if you're printing them yourself, which this is going to be open source and you can print your own. Or if you don't have a printer or don't want to mess with it, you can just buy it from my site whenever I get the sale page up. Okay, then the outer riser can be placed into the bottom shell of the NES. Fits snugly, may require force. Once I get it screwed down, I can say for sure, but it looks like the edge could come down a little further, and maybe not. And when you compare it to the original top shell being on there, you know what, I think it's pretty close. I'm just thinking about, I'm just seeing, I can kind of see through where the inner rib of the bottom piece is lower. You can kind of see through there. Even all the way down, you can still kind of see daylight through there. Not a huge deal, really. But if it could be brought down, it looks like there's still at least, I'd say a good, there's over 1 millimeter there that it could come down, but then it wouldn't look original, well, because the original has a little bit of a space there. Okay, then we install the board mount into the bottom of the NES shell, and the Hi-Def NES will screw to this mount using one of the original short screws. In a spot towards the front of the system, which was apparently that one. That's a bit tight right there. But also looks like the plastic right underneath the HDMI port is hitting the 3D printed piece. But it looks like the metal of the HDMI port is just a little bit beyond flush. That's fine, but it almost looks like it could be. Well, it's lined up perfectly with these holes, so I want to say, I guess at this point you could actually even sandwiched together. It's not quite perfect, and it doesn't looks like it's just hitting. A little bit of plastic is left. Which I've never known that plastic to be crucial for any reason. I've cut it out a few times before. I'm just curious if that'll make it Well, it's a lot closer, and it seems fairly flush up here, so that makes me think that maybe we should have Greg pull that up closer to the connector. Because it looks perfectly flush against the back plate. It's possibly offset that way a little bit. I'm talking maybe, geez, a quarter millimeter. I'd say there's just under a millimeter of space on that side, and it's flush on this side, this way. So it looks like the plastic could be brought up, you know, almost a full millimeter from the bottom, but the whole thing needs to be moved that way, somewhere in the range of half a millimeter or less. Get it lined up. Okay, one of the short screws. To me it looks like it could actually do, oh, no, never mind. That one's going to be used there, it looks like. Okay. Good and tight. Yeah, the instructions even say the screw hole at the back of the system will go in after the inner riser is placed in. The inner riser will go in next. Use another original short screw to install through the Hi-Def NES and into the board mount. Let's see, I know there's, it looks like he's mimicked the inner rib up here. A little bit unnecessary, and it just looks like this little peg of a rib right here could be easily broken off. I mean, at least it's not metal, so it wouldn't short anything out, but there's no reason to make it like that. It could go all the way around as far as I'm concerned, because I mean there's, you know, I was gonna say there's nothing there to hit, but maybe, yeah, it looks like that screw head right there is the only thing you need to miss, so it could be probably 3 times as wide as it is. You could even bring it back to this post for added strength. Same with that one. I don't know if it's easier, but you could add a rib up through there to connect those two. And it looks like that screw mount peg right there is, I was going to say it was tall, but maybe it's just the, a bit rough on the bottom. Probably not important. And the screws do go all the way through the inner rib. They don't threaded through it. Now it says you can install the main board, which at this point you would probably have your ribbon cables and your power wire hooked in. That's one thing that could be added here, because usually our ribbon cables sit between this and the motherboard. If we could have 2 recesses there where it wasn't clamping down on the ribbon cable, that would be great. Get a couple ribbon bolts. So yeah, it looks like just, I'd say these things are like 11/16 wide. So like maybe 3/4 of an inch depression on each side of the post. And it doesn't even have to be, I mean, they're super thin. It doesn't have to be as much of depression as what's in the ribs. Just a little something for them to sit in would be great. The wire can go through, actually the wire just will sit down in here. Because, well, the way I wire mine, or the way I solder mine, I'm just going to the 7805 holes. So that won't be a problem. I'm not sure if my front peg's not lined up. Still feels like there's a little bit of play there, which a little bit, not going to hurt it. Let's see, now what's he say for screws? 2 1-inch screws on each side of the cart port, and the 3 3/4-inch screws on the remaining 3 screw positions, which I'm assuming is those. So these are the 1-inch, right? Yep. And the AV Famicom will have 2 more right there. And they are normally the same size as these two. Looks like you got heads that are meant for a number 1 screwdriver. I wonder if we can change that, because yeah, I believe it's a number 1. Number 1 fits better. Because the originals are number 2. Be nice to use all the same screwdriver. And I think this is the original screw. So yeah, that would have been why the spacers so looks to me like there is almost too much. Like we almost need to go just a bit shorter, which I think he said 3/4 inch, right? So yeah. This one might actually be a little bit longer than 3/4 inch. Yeah. So, like I said, I don't think we're going to be doing this spacer thing. But I am worried that the points of these sheet metal screws are going to come through and give you a divot down here. I've seen that happen where people use the longer cart screw down here. I've seen it a ton. You pay attention to pictures of the bottom of the top loader shell. You see a white divot here, here. It's these screws. Somebody used the wrong one. So I'm not going to go clamping too hard. Yes, the LED. Clip is pressed in after the LED is partially inserted into its mounting hole. Normally I'd say let's just put a hole in there that it'll press fed into, but if it's going to stick out like this and it could be pushed back through, then the mounting piece is a great idea. If you're installing the Hi-Def NES, best to test it before you wrap it up. You'll have your LED wired, your interposers will be here, you'll all be wired up and you can go test it, because you just don't want to be putting in screws and taking them out until you know it works. But one thing that's not mentioned is in his install instructions, which they are there. I think he forgot to write it down, so we'll have him write those in. And this is Bob's site on a page that's not even up yet. But you'll have these extra screws. Let's see, I think there should be one short one, possibly, also, because you used 2 short. And then if you have an 80 Famicom, there'll be 2 more of those. So yeah, you'll have 9, and you can actually put these screws in these storage holes. That is just one of the little details that I probably never would have thought to tell him to add, and I think that is excellent, very excellent to think of that. I'm not going to do it right now, because this is just a prototype piece. I'm not going to wire it up. I'm not going to install the Hi-Def NES or anything like that. Just wanted to test fitment. And since I have found a few things that might need changed, and since we're going to have a better color eventually too, looks like that hole's not quite, neither hole's quite lined up perfectly. I think these went through fine, and these back holes, not sure if that's coming through on the video very well. They're not quite perfectly lined up. And since they're not meant to be there for threading through, you could probably just make them bigger, if not just move them. There, I can feel it go into the top shell. He did say that these screws are the same thread, so you can do the trick that I always do, where you actually back it out until you hear it click, just like that. And then you can screw it down, and then you're not making new threads in those plastic posts, which could eventually lead to it getting stripped if it's removed and inserted a lot. Which, if those, let's see, would it be the inner or the outer riser that has the holes right here? If they are not better aligned, then you can't actually do that trick, because it's acting like a thread right now. It feels like he went through a lot of trouble to try to mimic the gaps and everything. Not sure it's totally necessary, but whatever. I'm not sure what's going on here either. It looks like he maybe tried to get it to say HDMI or something, but it just looks like a bunch of braille, a bunch of rough spots. If it's going to turn out ugly like that, I'd say just remove them, or make them higher or deeper. I guess higher and larger. I mean, I'd love it if it said maybe not HDMI just because of licensing problems, but Hi-Def NES. I can't make out if it's supposed to say anything right there. Feels as solid as stock to me. You know, like I said, I'm not super thrilled about these spaces where the internal rib on the bottom shell is almost flush with that ledge, like right there and there, because you can kind of see it. Otherwise, that is really cool, Greg. I love it. I'm glad you come up with it, because I never would have thought. This, however, begs the question: can we do it to the front loader? I kind of half looked at it, and I think it's possible. If it's a Hi-Def NES install and you're getting rid of the 7805 anyway, then you can remove that little heatsink off the 7805, and then that might actually give you most of what you need for setting the Hi-Def NES main board right there. The other problem is the capacitor. The 2200 microfarad capacitor kind of sits in the same place. Kind of sits almost level. I'd have to show it, but it's not. I mean, it's not that big of a deal right now. But if it can be done, I'm sure we could sell some of those pieces too. I mean, a no-cut mod for the front loader. Why not? Yeah. Great job, Greg. Really appreciate it. I guess we'll wait and see if Greg replies about the little issues that I found, and maybe make another prototype, maybe do another video, or if everybody says, oh well, then maybe we'll just sell it like it is. I don't know. As always, if you're looking for updates and information, don't email me. I will likely just ignore it or send you a link to my frequently asked questions page on my website. I post all updates to the main page blog area, just underneath of the big flash part that scrolls through the slideshow or whatever. And I also post to Twitter. So if you have Twitter, follow me on Twitter. I put everything there, and that's the best place to keep up with everything.